You are listening to the Motherhood Unstressed podcast, and I'm your host, Liz Carlisle. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for spending this time with me, whether you're walking your dog or exercising or cleaning your house or whatever you may be doing. Happy Monday. I'm glad that you're here. And I'm thrilled to share the work of my guest with you today. Her name is Adrienne Nolan-Smith. She is a board-certified patient advocate, speaker, health researcher, and founder of WellBe. And WellBe is dedicated to helping people become empowered in their health, both in the day-to-day or when they're faced with a chronic health issue. At the end of the day, her work is rooted in helping clients figure out the cause of illnesses so that the body can heal naturally. And I think no matter your age, you have to at some point navigate the healthcare system in this country, or if you're listening from Europe. And so to understand that you are, in fact, the CEO of your body and your health, that you have the power to make executive decisions regarding the care that you're going to receive, I think that that's really crucial information. And so many people go to the doctor, they don't push back, they don't ask questions, they don't question the doctor because we're all trained to see them as the experts, which they are. But at the same time, there's a lot of experts out there. And so when you realize that you have the power to say yes or no to a certain doctor or a certain form of treatment and do your own research, the onus is really on us to protect ourselves, to make sure that we're getting the best care, that we're doing the right thing by our bodies or our loved ones' bodies. I think that that's really important. And as someone who is surrounded by, people, friends, family who work in healthcare, I'm not anti-healthcare. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying do your homework. I'm saying be an advocate for yourself, for your children, for your parents, for your loved ones, for your friends. And in the end, at the end of the day, you can look at any form of treatment or any medications that you may be taking and be fully behind it and be fully supporting that because you did the work, you did the research, and know that that's the best path for you. So I love talking to Adrienne. I think you're going to get so much out of this episode. I think this is going to boost your confidence when you go into that waiting room, when you go into that doctor's office, so that you are fully in control of your life, of your body, of your health, of all of it, and it all is connected. So if you love this episode, please share it with at least one friend. Please leave us a review. Tag us on Instagram at Motherhood Unstressed so I can share it back out and share your thoughts on this. Hi guys, I want to talk to you about a vitamin company that I'm absolutely obsessed with right now. It's called Hiya Vitamins, and it was actually created by two dads who wanted to bring a better vitamin for their kids to market. Because honestly, with the vitamins that are out there right now, they are filled with sugar, they're filled with fillers, they're filled with junk that make the vitamins taste good, but then there's nothing really beneficial from them. And the boys love the vitamins. They get excited every morning when I give it to them. And I just can feel good about it because Hiya Vitamins are filled with 12, count them 12, farm fresh fruits and vegetables. They're supercharged with 15 essential vitamins and minerals known to help support a healthy immune system, energy levels, brain function, mood, teeth, bones, and more. And as we head into this next school year, I don't want my kids crashing out because of sugar, which, probably will happen, but I don't want it happening from their vitamin. So if you're interested in trying them out, we've worked out an exclusive offer with Hiya Health for their best-selling children's vitamin. This is just for Motherhood Unstressed podcast listeners, and you receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/unstressed or enter the code unstressed at checkout. That's hiyahealth.com/unstressed to get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults. Full discount is applied at checkout. Well, hello, Adrienne. Welcome to the show. I am so glad that you're here. I'm just truly amazed by the work that you're doing. And I always I don't know, it's exciting to see people who are out in the world empowering others, removing them from a victim mentality. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Wow. Yeah. Given that introduction, I'm so thrilled to be here. Absolutely.
Well, take our audience through your background a little bit. How did you get started? How did you move into this space where you are really being an advocate for people in the healthcare system?
Absolutely. So, as I'm sure it's, part of what you do relates to your personal journey as well. So I think that's the case for a lot of us. I came to this space and this mission really based on personal experiences. for my own health and as a caretaker for when my mom became sick. But it started over 2 decades ago with a diagnosis of Lyme disease. I know they have Lyme disease all over the continental U.S. at this point. So, but back then it was really a disease of New England, New York, that kind of area where I grew up. And my brother had been diagnosed and he was much sicker than I was. But the doctors looked at me and thought, we can't figure out what's wrong with her. Let's test her too. And sure enough, I had it as well. We did conventional treatment. We did, antibiotics. I'm pretty sure it was doxycycline at the time. A couple months of it, I think. But as my mom had read and suspected, after a certain point, when you have Lyme, antibiotics is not as effective as when you catch it early, when it's just in that incubation period. And it's because Lyme is a very tricky bacteria, or it's actually a spirochete, which is a spiral-shaped bacteria. So it goes in all places in your body where it's very hard for the antibiotics to reach. So we did it. It didn't work for either of us, and we still had Lyme symptoms. And it started my family on this crazy journey of, I shouldn't say crazy because it drives me crazy that term is so associated with natural medicine, to be honest. Woo-woo, crazy, out there, quacky, whatever, because that's actually what got me better. But we started doing a lot of different natural therapies from, hyperbaric oxygen, Chinese herbs, a lot of different supplements, even energy healing, all these different things, some of which took me to random places in the U.S. for a couple of weeks, at a time, with my mom and brother in like a motel, which was not fun as like a 12-year-old. But 2 years after my diagnosis, my Lyme was in remission. My symptoms had dissipated. I think I'll always sort of have some short-term memory stuff. Like I still find it hard to look at a piece of paper with a number, look away, and then know the number, which is one of the things I was experiencing when I was first diagnosed with Lyme. But largely, I stopped having any sort of symptoms after 2 years. And fast forward, so I had great health throughout high school. And fast forward to going to college. I went to college in Baltimore at Johns Hopkins. And once I arrived, about 6 months later, I lost my period. And my period had been, or my menstrual cycle had been regular since I was 12 when I first got it. And once it disappeared, after about 6 months of not having it, I began to get pretty worried because it hadn't done that before. And I knew, or I thought it was very related to a problem within my body and fertility and things like that. So I started to see all these doctors, conventional doctors, because to me, the Lyme experience was like an isolated incident. That wasn't like how I was going to live my life necessarily. I mean, I changed how I ate quite a bit because of that. And at least I did at home. Basically I was forced to eat a lot of really healthy food based on what my mom had learned from treating us. But once I got to college, that all kind of went by the wayside, and I was eating at the cafeteria 3 days, 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, and whatever I wanted. And so I started to see doctors at Johns Hopkins, endocrinologists, gynecologists. I even came back to New York City where I grew up and went to some kind of really notable doctors here to figure it out. And every single one of them just said, nothing is wrong with you as far as we can see. Just take this birth control prescription and be on your way. It'll get your period back. And I had learned enough from my Lyme experience to know that you have to come with your own research. So I had done a lot of research myself, and I told them, look, the birth control pill is a Band-Aid. It's not a solution. There's a lot of side effects. And also it's going to cover up the problem that I have that's making this period disappear. And then maybe this problem is going to get much worse, and I won't really know because I'm going to have this fake period that the birth control induces. And I don't want that. I want to solve the problem. I want to deal with it. I want to know what's wrong. So they all kind of were like, well, we can't help you. Like, we have no idea. So there was like not even an iota of interest in figuring out the real issue. So my dad found me a naturopath in New York to work with. And I came back from college my summer before my junior year and worked with this woman. She looked at my blood work so differently. She really went over it for an hour with me. No doctor had ever done that. You know, It was like your levels are normal, or but like it never explained all the different pieces.
This episode is brought to you by Let's Get Checked, the leading provider of at-home health tests. Are you looking to improve your hormone levels? With Let's Get Checked, you can do a simple at-home health test that will give you a complete picture of your hormonal health in just 5 days. Female hormone function is an important part of our health, and some of the main symptoms of thyroid imbalance, which is so common for so many women, includes weight gain, fatigue or feeling tired all the time, mood changes, skin rashes, and headaches. So how does the process work? Well, your test is delivered straight to your door. You just have to self-collect your blood sample from the tip of your finger. You mail the sample back to their accredited lab with the prepaid label, and you receive support and guidance from the Let's Get Checked medical team. And they're available 24/7 to offer you the personalized advice that you need to know your hormonal health. And this week, Let's Get Checked wants to invite you to join their community with the 30% discount code UNSTRESSED30. That's something that's really good to know. So just go to letsgetchecked.com and use my code UNSTRESSED30 and find out what is going on with your body so that you can make the best decision for your health.
And she showed me all these interesting things that I had just kind of attributed as to other things, like being very random. She showed me how they were really all connected. And how it had it had to do with thyroid and hormones and my gut, and having traveled abroad and lived in China when I was in high school and taken a bunch of Cipro and antibiotics there because of China belly, which basically just means you get sick a lot when you're in China, or a lot of us did. And how all these things, and then my poor diet at college for 6 months after many years of eating very, very clean food at home, and how all these things together kind of created this environment in which my body was thinking it couldn't conceive a child. It wasn't healthy enough for that. So, that's what loss of period, or amenorrhea as the technical term, really is your body saying, okay, this is not a safe environment to bring an infant. Mm-hmm. Things just aren't quite right in here. So we're just going to pause this period, basically meaning you can't get pregnant. So that now I know some people can get pregnant without having a period. It's possible, but largely those two things are correlated. And it was very fascinating to me my body was actually so brilliant as to say, we're going to stop, doing that because we want you to heal before, we would try to have a baby. So I worked with this woman for 6 months, really with just herbs, supplements for some micronutrient deficiencies, and really the herbs were for my gut. And then also changing my diet, not radically, but changing my diet. And 6 months later, 4 of those months, by the way, were back in China. I studied abroad because I was a Chinese concentration in college. So I went back to China during that time. So, even with all of that, I still, 6 months later, she said, do this religiously. I did. It will come back in 6 months. 6 months and a day later, it came back. And it's been, every 30 days since then. That was 13 years ago. So it was my sort of episode number 2 of what got me really interested in this space, because I thought, okay, 2 different occasions in my life, I've had a health issue. I've tried to go the conventional route. I've gone to the best doctors. And then it's this woman who looks kind of funky. She's got a long ponytail. She's got incense in her office and this and that, who blows me away with her knowledge about my blood and all the different things that could be the root causes, and uses all these natural things with no side effects and no other issues to help my body heal itself. And I thought that was pretty remarkable. And so I still didn't want to work in this space. It never occurred to me to do that. But shortly after my period came back, my mother was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder following a big a big manic episode on the street, in which, it's a long story, but my brothers and I had to chase her through the subway and basically put her in a human straitjacket and call the police and have her taken away in the middle of the night. It was a terrible experience, but what followed was actually worse. She was in these different mental health care facilities, which are really like jails, to be honest. Some of the nicer ones, feel a little better, but most of them feel pretty bad. For 3 years off and on, and heavily medicated on, lithium and Risperdal, like antipsychotic, really powerful things that make you tremor and drool and can't sleep and gain weight and all this crazy stuff. And, she seemed worse on the drugs than she seemed when she was manic. Yeah. So we basically traded one problem for another. And each drug had side effects, and each, so then we were adding, more drugs, or they added more drugs for each side effect. It was really a nightmare. So after about 3 years of being like, she didn't see an end in sight, because she felt like she had to stay on these meds forever, because she did try to go off them a few times and have some relapses. So we were scared. I had no idea about the mental health care system. I'd never interacted with it before. We didn't know what would happen if she was totally off. Nobody gave us any other solutions besides more meds, tinkering the doses. That was really the only thing going on. She took her life when I was 25, after about 3 years of it. And it was, a horrible shock. It was right before Christmas. And my applications for business school, because I was applying to business school, were actually due 2 weeks later. And so I've been working for over a year, taking the tests, getting the recommendations, writing the essays, like a whole thing, visiting the schools, doing the interviews. And I basically didn't think I was going to be able to send in any of the applications, because I was just, not sleeping, not eating, like just total shock, I think. So my friends sort of gathered and said, I think we can make this happen. Let's, we're really close. Like, a couple of them stayed up till 3 a.m. with me one night, just like trying to get something done. I just got a few out the door. And I said, if I do get in, I will dedicate the rest of my career and my life to this totally messed up healthcare system, which I think her death was, looking back on it, really avoidable had she had anybody who thought more holistically about her health in charge. Now I've had the pleasure through my work with WellBe to interview, a number of different integrative psychiatrists who don't medicate at all, like Dr. Kelly Brogan. And even some of the other ones really use testing and these other therapies to try to get the physical body right. And my mom had loads of other health issues. She had, viruses and parasites and like terrible gut health. She had weight issues. She had depression. She had childhood traumas. She had chronic fatigue. She had all these things, kind of thyroid issues, like all together. And so nobody looked under the surface, and those things go untreated for long enough, they manifest, or they continue to kind of build. It's like a bucket, and until the bucket spills over. And my parents had divorced, and I think the bucket spilled over with that trauma, because the stress of it is, we think, what brought it on. And so had anybody really tried to heal her gut, really tried to work on those childhood traumas and pull them out and process them. Had anybody tried to, get her on some sort of thyroid hormone so that she could not feel so low, all those things, I think she would have been in a very different place today. And hopefully even been able to, wean off those medications and stuff the way that I've seen certain psychiatrists that I've now interviewed do with their patients. So I did get into business school. I went to Northwestern University in Chicago. So I moved to Chicago 6 months after she died.
It's a great school.
Thank you. I loved it. I love Chicago. I'm from New York, so I thought New York was the greatest city in the world, but I went to Chicago and loved it too. So it has a special place in my heart. And I also met my husband there. So that was great. But yeah, I got there and basically started to talk to anybody who would talk to me about integrative health, integrative medicine, wellness, holistic health, like all the terms that you hear. And very few people were talking about it, especially in Chicago. And there were practitioners for sure, they're acupuncturists, chiropractors, things like that. But there were nobody really starting businesses in it. And it was also just when Instagram was kind of just before it started. So there was no conversation happening the way that there is today. I couldn't reach out to people. I couldn't see that there was a community of people talking about this. So I just I got pushed into like the health tech space at school because they didn't know what to do with me. There was no space for me, no category for what I was talking about. So I sort of built a version of my now company called WellBe when I was there in a class with some engineers. And it was a community for people seeking non-surgical, non-pharmaceutical health solutions.
Wow.
But I graduated, shelved it, and said, I'm not ready to be a sole founder right now. Like that's like having a child. Like it's really intense. And I also haven't worked in the healthcare system. I know the patient side. I know the caretaker side. I don't know the administrator side. I don't know what it's like. I think I can see all the problems, but I really don't know them the way that I would know them if I worked in it. So I worked for a patient engagement software company, and I worked with hospitals for 3 years. So I was in a hospital like every week, I would say, in meeting with clients. And the irony is largely focused on chronic disease management programs.
Wow.
So I really got to see close up, like how the conventional healthcare system deals with chronic health issues. And it was just as bad as I thought,
right.
If not worse. And I also got to see how unhealthy all the people trying to solve the problems were. So I was kind of like, if you can't take care of yourself, why do you think you can solve these other problems for other people? Like, I don't see it. So I I left that job exactly 3 years ago to refound WellBe as it is today, and decided that I knew a lot of people who had the means and the education to make better decisions with their health, but were still making terrible decisions with their health. So to me, it wasn't just an access problem. It was a full cultural awareness problem, and just a lack of knowledge, lack of information.
Right.
And it's almost like a lack of interest too, or so I thought, in really like taking care of themselves. It was kind of like this, it'll be someone else's problem, So I thought it was also important to show the dangers within the healthcare system and within taking pharmaceutical drugs and things like that, which is why I share my mom's story too, to show and talk about, things like medical error and antibiotic resistant superbugs and things that basically show it's not a great idea to have to go into the system at all. Like, the more we can avoid it, the healthier you will likely be.
Right.
Not, for an annual physical. And I definitely believe in getting routine testing and things like that. But routine procedures go wrong. Drugs have lots of side effects. There's, just kind of not doing anything for your health and then relying on that can often yield an outcome you didn't necessarily want. And so it's really about making, I say that the 100 choices a day are really your healthcare. So starting there. And then when you need to access any sort of healthcare, to make sure you're working with a provider who really looks at your whole body and treats you holistically and cares about the root cause. So those are my two real pillars of my message. And I started with interviewing people telling stories of health recovery through integrative medicine, which is my favorite thing that I do. And these stories you can't even believe them when you're listening to them, but they're incredible. And also started to interview a lot of experts within the integrative and functional medicine space. So a lot of, functional MDs and things like that, as well as really share the research that I was seeing coming out of places like Johns Hopkins and Northwestern showing. I just read a research paper last night about how 2 botanical herbs are showing more effectiveness in patients with chronic Lyme disease than a common antibiotic, which is doxycycline. And I was just reading it thinking, this is the conventional healthcare system doing this research. It's pretty cool. And also, like, why is this not getting out there to the point of, there needed to be more studies. It was a small study, but it was enough to show me that we're going in the right direction as far as bringing these, woo-woo things like herbs and other kinds of natural therapies into, some more clinical research spaces. There's still a lot of work to be done there because most of the research is, of course, still on pharmaceuticals.
Right. Because that's where the funding is, right?
Exactly. 100%. WellBe started as just a content, media thing. I'm active on social media as well, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. I have a weekly newsletter, and has now gotten into kind of people told me they really needed help making a lot of the changes that my experts talked about, that the research covered, that our investigative guides got into. So we also have the Spark Health program, which is just finishing now. It's a week away from being over, and really takes people through, the 8 pillars of what it takes to really prevent and avoid any chronic health issues and live your healthiest life. And really with research-backed information and a whole bunch of vetted products and things like that to make it easier for people to make the changes. The idea is just that you can make the changes within the 8 weeks and be done with it. So it's been pretty awesome to see the first class actually make all these changes. Very exciting. But in a few weeks, I'll be able to get back to making more content and, helping people in other ways. One other thing I forgot to mention is I became a board certified patient advocate in the process, in about actually 2 years ago, the spring of 2018, I took the board exam, and I did so because I learned so much about the healthcare system when I worked in it. Mm-hmm. So I had all this knowledge about Medicare and Medicaid billing and insurance claims and just a lot of stuff that I thought I would forget. And I knew I wouldn't really be using, or I thought I wouldn't be using with my, work with WellBe. So I took the exam, got certified, and then now am licensed to actually consult with people who are trying to navigate or figure out a chronic health issue. Wow. And get to, my use case is a little different from most advocates, but mine is to get people to, holistic, functional, integrative doctors who are going to be able to figure out the root causes, not just throw more prescriptions at them or surgeries or whatever, but really understand, why is your body having this symptom? Let's figure out what's going on.
Have you been welcomed into the healthcare system as an advocate? And the doctors know that you're kind of trying to wean people off of their dynamic, what they've been used to doing?
So what I'm doing mostly now is just I have phone consults with people to understand what's been going on, what doctors have already told them, what they've already tried, and then they basically tell me what they want to do next, what they're interested in. And most of them are at that point pretty fed up and ready to go to a more holistic type of doctor. And so I just need to understand the right one to get them to. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there's several options. So it's really about using my understanding of what they've already been going through and putting together the clues of all their different symptoms and things like that to understand, okay, this is really a gut problem, even though it's manifesting as a mental health issue, or this is really, you have asthma, but I can tell this is really related to food allergies or things like that, and try to get them to somebody that I know is really knowledgeable about that, or whether it's Lyme or these other things. So that's kind of how, and then, there's usually a process with getting them to that person, because some of them don't have availability, or their wait list is long, or their pricing's correct, just very high or something like that. So it's not usually the first try is the winner. You got to keep going a bit. Then they get a plan from the doctor. And it's a lot to implement, because if they hadn't been living this way, then it's a big change. So there's also a sense of all right, well, I'm still here for you once you get the plan, to try to figure out how you can put it into practice, and also help you go back to the doctor with the questions that you really haven't figured out to implement it properly. Because a lot of people have a couple of questions they never feel like they get a chance to ask them, and then they don't implement anything.
If you're like me and you adore a calming glass of wine at the end of the day with dinner, then I'm really excited to tell you about this new company that's sponsoring the show called Usual Wines. Now, it's not just because they don't add sugar, which they don't. It's not just because the wine tastes fantastic, which it does. My favorite thing about this company has to be that they package it in these 6.3 ounce individualized bottles per box. What that means, ladies and gentlemen, is that there's no more wasting beautiful bottles of wine because you didn't drink the whole bottle in one sitting. You literally open a bottle, pour it in, and you're good to go. And if you want one, open another one, but you're not putting a cork in a larger bottle of wine and then the next day it doesn't taste as good, because I can't tell you how many times that's happened and how soul crushing that is, because you want to have, the same taste the next day and it's just not there. So Usual Wines has completely hacked that. I think it's brilliant what they're doing. And the wine, again, is no added sugar. They harvest it at just the right time. A lot of wine companies harvest it too early, so there's all this added sugar involved. They don't do that. And it's straight out of Sonoma County, so it's good. So be sure to go check out their website at www.usualwines.com and use my discount code UNSTRESSED for $8 off your first order.
Right. Because there's that one or two things they didn't know what to do with. So they leave the whole plan sitting on a desk and don't really do much. So I really care about, even though that sounds like more of a health coach, but I care about that end bit so that they actually are on the journey to getting better, not just like, okay, I got you to the doctor.
See ya.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Out of all the pillars that you talk about, which one do you think is the most important, if there was one that really stood out to you?
But I think they're equally important, unfortunately. The two are just that, you have to treat every single choice that you make as healthcare every day. You can't sort of mindlessly go through life eating whatever tastes good, not really moving if you don't feel like it, not paying attention to how much water you're drinking or what kind of water you're drinking, what kind of products you're using on your face. Like that will not work in today's, society, because it's a pretty hairy food system, a pretty hairy personal care system, pretty hairy environmentally out there. So if you kind of don't pay attention, it's likely you will have a chronic disease or several, as we've seen from all of, from Americans today. There's like 60 or almost 70% of Americans have a chronic disease of some kind. And I think about 40% have two. I might be off a little bit on the numbers, but I'm pretty sure that's the latest that I saw, and it's just continuing to grow.
That's incredible. That's unreal. And then you add in like an aging population and an obese population, and I'm sure it's just multiplied.
Oh yeah, the obesity problem is just headed towards the sky. We had 3 years of life expectancy age decline in the U.S. for the first time since I think like the 50s or 40s, like after the war. And that's just like a really depressing sign, because it shows that we're actually sicker generation than generations before, which didn't have access to all the things that we do. And it's really our food and our environment that's causing these issues. And also the way that we treat healthcare, way that we use healthcare to treat people. So yeah, the pillar of taking, being the CEO of your body and nourishing it every day the way that you would water a plant, so that it doesn't become a chronic health issue or several, is my main pillar that I talk about. And then the second one that's equally important is when you do have some issue, because today, as I said, is a very polluted world that we live in, a very stressful world that we live in. Most of us do have at least one chronic health issue, even if it's minor, if not several. And when I say that, it could be anything from post-nasal drip, right? That's a sign of inflammation, chronic sinus infections, migraines, a thyroid issue, gut trouble, some sort of, you regularly bloat or have.
I feel like that's one, if we could just talk about that, that's one I hear about almost all the time. And it's usually people in their 20s or 30s that are complaining of, bloating and not feeling right in their gut. And they're not really sure why. And they're not going to the doctor either because they're still young and they can function. So talk to us about that. What can you do to optimize your gut health, for anyone struggling, which is a lot of people out there?
Yeah. So there's so many factors that go into good gut health that you have to do a bit of investigative work as to why you're having bloat or why you have constipation or something like that. Even things like whether or not you were breastfed or delivered vaginally, things like that. Those things populate your gut with good bacteria that you need to fight off or to balance and make sure that bad bacteria doesn't take over and get in control. So that's really interesting. The other thing that's important is a lot of, over-the-counter medicines, for example, they can loosen the gut lining. So things like popping, I think like Advil or Midol or whatever, these things can be problematic. Unclean water. So I don't mean unclean like third world unclean where it's going to give you diarrhea, but there's a lot of different heavy metals and other chemicals in our water, as well as because we haven't really updated our water treatment plants since the onslaught of pharmaceutical use. A lot of us are drinking hormones from that, which is crazy because so many women take the birth control pill and then pee it out.
Right.
And lots of other drugs as well. So if you drink tap water, you're likely consuming these other things as well. And so that is really harmful to the gut. So those are all important things. Not eating enough fermented foods, because fermented foods really repopulate the gut with good bacteria. So that's another important one. And just not having a diverse enough diet to begin with, because diversity of color and diversity of type of foods means diversity of good bacteria as well that will then populate the gut. So a lot of Americans have, the standard American diet is totally lacking in different kinds of
beige.
Yeah, exactly. It's beige. And even, let's say that you eat tomatoes. Well, really, that should only be like one season a year. And, in addition to so many other plants that are available at that time. But a lot of people go to the grocery store 12 months a year and buy tomatoes. That's like a major food group in the US. So, and they're quite high in sugar, actually. So it's a really interesting problem that we've created, the supermarket, where you can kind of have everything all the time, because it used to be that we had to actually see what was growing and eat all these different varieties. I think there's thousands of edible plants, if not tens of thousands in the world, and we're eating like so few of those. It seems like dozens maybe.
So what would you say to the listener who's a mom and the kids only like 3 things on the menu, and she's like, well, I don't feel good. I'm noticing my children are hyperactive and, not just in the normal kid way. What can I do to bring more health to my family? Because we are struggling. Absolutely.
So the first thing I would say is for animal products, really understanding not giving kids or yourself animal products, both meat and dairy, that you don't know what they ate. So if you cannot say pretty definitively, because you're looking at the package or you've had, extensive conversations in a restaurant, that this was a grass-fed, pasture-raised, organic animal, then you're adding hormones, antibiotics, these other things, and a lot of other genetically modified feed that these animals were eating into your diet. So that goes for chicken, that goes for, I know kids love to order chicken fingers on a menu, but if it's a factory farm chicken, that's not good for their gut. Right. And causes and genetically modified crops are, also we're seeing linked to some pretty severe food allergies. Certainly the soy, the corn, peanuts, things like that. So it's not just eating those GMOs yourself, but realizing that the animals were fed them as well. So being very conscious about the animals and the animal products that you eat. I'm certainly not a vegan or vegetarian, but I'm very conscious about trying not to have much dairy or meat if I don't know where it came from, and not have too much of it also, because
anyway,
I think,
right.
So that's really important. Not rushing to give kids antibiotics all the time.
Yes. I'm so glad you just said that.
It's a really big one. A course of antibiotics can wipe out a kid's good gut bacteria for, I think it's like up to a year, maybe. So yeah, just doing everything you can to make sure that whatever it is that you think requires antibiotics is actually bacterial and not viral, before getting that antibiotic. Because if it is if it is viral, the antibiotics won't work anyway, and then you're just using something that causes great harm to the gut when you didn't need to. And if you do need to take antibiotics, make sure you're also giving that child a probiotic at the same time, and eating a lot of probiotic foods at the same time, making sure that child is eating a lot of, pickled things. And what's really interesting is that a lot of people think, okay, they could eat yogurt, and they're giving kids like yogurt with like sugar. Sugar is the worst thing you can do for your gut. The worst.
I needed this reminder. Dang it.
So the irony is that, like, you're canceling them out, right? If you're having sugar in the thing that you're eating to help your gut, it's like, well, what does make sense? The same thing with gummy vitamins, it doesn't make any sense, because there's sugar in the gummies, and sugar causes so much inflammation that usually you're taking the multivitamin to quell inflammation. So it's like you're canceling them out. And of course, kids prefer gummy vitamins because it looks like candy, but vitamins or supplements come in, liquid forms now. They come in powder forms now. So you can always sprinkle that whatever into some juice or some plain yogurt or something like that, a soup or whatever. It doesn't, they won't tell.
Right.
So you could definitely get that in without having to give a kid sugary gummy vitamins or sugary yogurt for a probiotic. So hopefully all of those are helpful, avoiding the meat that's not pasture-raised, organic, grass-fed, and the dairy, not taking antibiotics unless you absolutely have to, avoiding sugar. And then if you do have to take antibiotics, making sure you're doing a lot on the side to try to help repair the damage. Those are all really important. And then I think also giving kids stress management tools. I know that sounds ridiculous for a little kid. They shouldn't even have to think about that. But with the devices today and just the anxiety that I think a lot of kids are experiencing today, from, social media and bullying and all this stuff that they're just exposed to. It's just this very fast paced, culture obsessed, that kind of thing, all the stuff that's going on with, just group texts and all. It's different. It's so different. So making sure that kids don't spend too much time on devices, if at all, and then also making sure that they know how to breathe and know how to return to breath when they get upset about something. Because a lot of people don't know how to breathe.
Adults don't know how.
Adults don't know how. And I think a lot of things would have been different in all of our lives had somebody taught us how to breathe earlier. Make sure that they're playing, really running around. Like, there's just nothing better for stress than running around and playing and laughing and all of that. So, I mean, for all adults as well. So I think all of those things would create a much healthier gut in today's world.
Oh, I love that answer. Oh, so good. But I want to go back. One of my last questions today is, when you're in the doctor's office, you want to be an advocate for yourself. I think so many people are afraid to ask more questions to their doctor or ask for a culture. I wouldn't even think to do that. I just listen to the doctor. Can you give the listener a script or something that they can say that'll give them some space to advocate for themselves in that moment, in that microsecond of a moment?
Oh my gosh, yes. First of all, you have to come at it from a perspective, like I said, that you are the CEO of your body. Imagine that the doctor is somebody that you are considering partnering with, right? You're a CEO, you're thinking of hiring a consultant. What do? You interview the consultant. Maybe they do an audit on your business or something like that, and then you listen to their report and you take it with a grain of salt and you say, like, okay, thanks, I'll be in touch if I'm considering working with you. That's exactly how it should be when you go into a doctor's office. Like, if, obviously if something is said that you don't want to hear, like you have cancer, you can't be like, I'll consider your answer, like you have to pay attention to that. But more so when somebody is telling you what to do, they are not God. They should not be treated like God. There are a lot of doctors who have different opinions on different things, who have different knowledge bases, have different training, even within the same specialty. So one person's answer is not necessarily the right answer or even the right way to think about it. There could be something completely different. A lot of the stories that I've told for WellBe, they go to so many doctors and each one of them says, it's a different thing or that there's a different way to treat it. So you can hear what they have to say and then just very politely say, I appreciate your perspective and I will be in touch if I'm, interested to work further with you or to, take your advice on this matter. And you should definitely talk to more than one doctor about something. And I think that you should bring in your own research. A lot of doctors are like, oh, Dr. Google, the people bring me all this stuff. And I say, that's just because you're scared. That's because you don't like to be challenged. And of course, there are things on the internet that are not reputable sources that you shouldn't really be. I think that people should be able to see whatever they want, honestly, and use their best judgment. But there are some places that are very conspiracy theorists. They kind of prey on people who don't know anything about health and put really scary thoughts in their minds. So I get the doctor's resistance to, that kind of research. But overall, 99% of the research that exists online will help you become more informed about what's going on with your body. And feel free to print that out, bring that in, reference that. The more reputable the organization, the better it'll hold up to a healthcare professional. Certainly, if you can go to a functional or integrative MD's own website or WellBe, where we interview a lot of functional MDs and cover research where you can go right to, the New England Journal of Medicine's research that we've covered and print that out and explain what the study said and that this might be something that could affect what you're going through or be the same symptom, et cetera. So I think getting your own information is a great way to empower yourself. And I know that there's controversy on that, but that's my stance. Also, making sure that, like I said, you talk to other people, you just kind of set the expectation that they are a potential partner. You've not made decisions, and that if they're saying you need to do X, Y, and Z, and they're trying to schedule you for a surgery or procedure right there in that office for the next thing, you say, no. Thank you so much. Let me think this over, and get as much as you can as far as other opinions and research on that before you, on potential side effects, and get all of that before you make any sorts of decisions or agree to anything, because you can go down a sort of rabbit hole of medical procedures, and it could have been, avoided in the beginning if you'd talk to somebody who said, oh no, there's a different way to approach this. Or have you considered that it's really this? Right. That's really the root cause. The other thing, like I just said, that's so important to make sure that when you are considering a partner is that they are interested in solving the root cause of the problem. That is the number one thing you are looking for. Because if someone is just saying you have IBS, okay, that means nothing. Irritable bowel syndrome. What is irritating your bowel, right? Mm-hmm. It's a made up term. Even, amenorrhea, what I had, loss of period. It just literally means in Latin, is loss of or not there. Menorrhea is menstrual cycle. So it means nothing. It doesn't explain what's going on. Right. So giving somebody, when a doctor gives a blanket term like that to a problem, even fibromyalgia means phantom pain around the body. Mm-hmm. They don't know what's causing it. It doesn't mean anything. So you want somebody who's not interested in just giving you, a blanket term diagnosis and saying, okay, this is the drug we use for fibromyalgia. No, you want somebody who's going to say, why are you having pain throughout your body? Let's connect these other symptoms that you have, because I'm sure there's more than just pain usually, and these life experiences, and try to piece together and use cutting edge testing and all of that to see what is under all of this. What is causing this? What is the food? What is the gut? What is all of this? And put together a program for you that helps your body actually heal itself by taking out the wrong inputs and putting in the right ones through food, through accessing the power of the mind, which we know is super powerful, through, elimination of toxins in your water, in your products, in your air, all that stuff. Hugely powerful for the body to then kind of free itself of its toxic burden and begin to heal properly. So that's really what you're looking for. That's the most important thing, is the root cause. And then not rushing into anything, making sure that for chronic health issues, you're really considering all the possibilities before agreeing to do anything. Again, this is not an emergency. If you cut your arm off,
not talking about a broken arm here.
Totally. Or get hit by a car, like you might have to be rushed into emergency surgery. And that's exactly what the conventional healthcare system is for, and where it shines. Like the stuff that can be done is so incredible. But it doesn't really apply or work for chronic health issues. And that's where I think we've gone awry, is that we were so enamored with what could be done with conventional, modern, Western medicine, whatever you want to call it, that we started to use it for all these other things. But it's really not, it's not effective in that way. So for healing, right? For saving your life, it's very effective. So those would be the couple of things I would recommend you speak to a doctor about. And then, you can see very, very fast if somebody is not really the kind of partner that you want. You're looking for somebody who has more of this functional medicine training or integrative medicine training usually.
Yeah, I would imagine you get a pretty clear picture of your doctor by their response to you saying something like that almost immediately. Yeah,
I think you would. And they might, be a little defensive and try to make it sound like they are looking for the root cause by, treating you for fibromyalgia or something. And you could very clearly see, I think at that point, no, you're not. Like there's only one way to talk about this, and you're not really giving me what I need here. But always be polite. I mean, people, a lot of the times it's not that doctors are bad people. It's that doctors don't have the training required to think holistically and connect the dots between the different systems in the body. They have, a couple hours of optional nutrition training over 4 years of medical school. So it's no wonder that they're not really equipped to be, solving a lot of chronic health issues, many of which come from food issues, right? So if they don't understand nutrition, and not just that, can be healed by food. So if they don't understand nutrition, it's very, very hard for them to, I think, deal with a lot of chronic health stuff. So it's better to just get out of the situation by being, giving them the deference that they want and being polite and whatever, and just in the back of your mind knowing this is not a partner for me.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. I love this conversation so much, Adrienne. Thank you. Where can our listener find more about you? Give us all the insights on that.
WellBe is the company, but Get WellBe is actually all of our social media channels, the website, so getwellbe.com. And then we also have a podcast. So it's called the WellBe Podcast, which is just the audio version of a lot of my interviews that are on, YouTube and the website. So that's where you can find me. I think the best ways to interact with me are on Instagram at GetWellBe, but also our weekly newsletter, because that's where all of our newest original content comes out once a week. And I share a lot of personal things and any sorts of special offers or new announcements there. Those would be the two best places. And thank you so much for having me. I thought this was terrific today.
Oh, thank you so much.
You have been listening to the Motherhood Unstressed podcast, and I'm your host, Liz Carlisle. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you love this episode, please share it out on your social media, Instagram stories, and tag us at Motherhood Unstressed so we can share it back out and keep the conversation going on these important topics. Also, make sure that you subscribe so that you never miss out on an interview with an amazing guest or our weekly guided meditations every Wednesday. This episode is sponsored by Motherhood Unstressed CBD. This is my line of organic, USA-grown hemp that was specifically designed to help you, the listener, battle stress and anxiety naturally. And what CBD does is it helps your body's own endocannabinoid system function better. So you're sleeping better, you're experiencing less stress and anxiety, and you're able to get everything done with an overall feeling of security, of groundedness, of calm. So if you would like that in your life, head on over to motherhoodunstressed.com, click the shop tab, and use the code podcast to save.